So for about a week and a half now since the end of the Graham Potter era, an axe has been delicately poised above the head of Kyle Macaulay. And it's been thought that it's just been a matter of time before that axe will fall and Kyle Macaulay would be removed as the head of recruitment from West Ham United. And indeed, that axe did fall and Kyle Macaulay and the club have parted ways. But it has to be asked a few things. Number one, who is Kyle Macaulay? What is his backstory? And what does his removal as West Ham United mean, if it means anything at all, for the future of the club in this department and the removal of David Sullivan as majority shareholder and chairman of West Ham United, an ambition held by many fan groups, principally including Hammers United, and what does it potentially mean for maybe some of the upcoming protests? We're going to get into a lot of those things, and I really want your thoughts on the implications of Kyle Macaulay's removal as the head of recruitment from West Ham United. You've got a comment section below, so get stuck into it, and I'll try and answer as many of them as I've got time to on the channel. Thanks very much indeed. Please don't forget to click a like on the stream, and if you have a hype available this week, please feel free to contribute that to this particular broadcast. This is what helps to get the channel's content out there to places it otherwise might not get. Why don't you consider helping out in this regard by sharing this onto your social media platforms? And finally, just check to make sure that you're subscribed. If you're not, please click subscribe and you can come on this journey with us and help to grow the channel into something bigger and better down the track. It's completely free of charge, takes a moment of your time, and we don't get any data sensitive information. We thank you very much indeed for your support. So who is Kyle Macaulay? So until very recently, as I say, he was the head of recruitment at West Ham United, but he has a long partnership with Graham Potter going back to their time together at Ostersund. Now, when Graham Potter has gone around from Ostersund to Swansea City, to Brighton and Hove Albion, to Chelsea, and also to West Ham United, Kyle Macaulay has been a constant through that chain of events, through those movements in Graham Potter's career. Indeed, when Graham Potter was relieved of his duties at his former club to West Ham United, Chelsea, Kyle Macaulay remained in his position until the call came from Graham Potter to come to West Ham United and fulfill a role as head of recruitment at West Ham United. It should be noted, though, that he wasn't a head of recruitment up till this point. Indeed, he was a data analyst, is what his job title was. So he found himself in an unfamiliar role. Now, whether he was a success in that, I think, given that he was only in post for 9 months, and obviously there's transfer windows, which means that you can't be going out and buying players for the duration of that 9 months. You've got a limited window. And I guess also it comes down to other things like finances and negotiations and all the rest of it with agents. Was he a success? Was he a failure? Well, some people think that if you look at signings like Hadji, Malick, Diouf, who was initially credited with being a Kyle Macaulay signing, you'd probably say that on the face of it, so far, it looks like he came up trumps with that signing, if nothing else. But now there's rumours doing the rounds that actually he wasn't a signing of Kyle Macaulay, but he was actually a signing of Maximilian Hahn. Now, whether he was or whether he wasn't, I guess we'll never probably know the truth. So he is now gone, and I do wonder what this means for the club. What does this mean for Nuno, Espírito, Santo? What does this mean for the ambitions to remove David Sullivan from post? Well, I did always wonder what direction of travel the club was going to be going in, because I remember, and I don't know if you spotted it, where during the initial video of Nuno's interview when he came into the club, he wasn't described as a manager. He was described as a head coach, which to me implies that there's going to be some... He will be involved in recruitment, I don't doubt, but he won't necessarily be going out and do like an old school manager and dealing with the negotiations and doing this, doing that, doing the other. So someone else is going to do that. I do ask myself the question, is a director of football and a head of recruitment, are they essentially the same thing? And I sort of sit back and I think to myself, actually, probably not, because the last person that effectively held the, or not effectively, but in fact held the role as a director of football at the club was Tim Steidten. Now, once Graham Potter turned up, it wasn't long after that that Tim Steidten moved into the distance as far as the club's concerned. And it was widely reported, and I think it was Sean Whetstone that confirmed it, that the de facto director of football was a certain David Sullivan. But aligned with that, we gave Kyle Macaulay the job and the title of Head of Recruitment, despite the fact that David Sullivan was the de facto Director of Football. So I sort of sit there and go, okay, so there is a clear divide between the responsibilities of a Director of Football and a Head of Recruitment, because if David Sullivan is fulfilling the role of Director of Football, and you're employing someone who's got the title of Head of Recruitment, then they must have two very different, similar but different responsibilities. But now that he's been removed as Head of Recruitment, the question is, who is our Head of Recruitment? And the problem is I think I know the answer, and I think you do as well. I suspect that the Head of Recruitment has now effectively become David Sullivan. So we've now got a situation, I suspect, where we've got a gentleman who is the major shareholder at the club. He's the chairman of the board. He's the, according to Sean Whetstone, the de facto director of football. And now I strongly suspect that he has also absorbed the title of Head of Recruitment, which then makes me a little bit concerned that the ambitions of Hammers United and of a lot of fan groups of having David Sullivan removed from his position at the club probably becomes ever more difficult. And I also refer back to, and I was listening to More Than Just a Podcast with Sean and Nigel Khan, and it was an episode about a week or two ago. And one of the questions regarded the possibility that David Sullivan could sell up. Now, Sean Whetstone, it has to be pointed out, knows David Sullivan. I don't, and I suspect that possibly you don't either. So Sean is quite well placed to answer this question. Now, Sean Whetstone basically turned around and said he doesn't see David Sullivan ever selling up. Indeed, he reckons that the time that he and the club will part ways will be on the day that David Sullivan draws breath for the last time on this earth. Now, he also went on to say that he believes that the club's ownership will pass into the hands of his sons, David and Jack, which makes me think that he's really going to dig his heels in now. If that is his long-term ambition, if his long-term ambition as a father is to pass on to his heirs, his sons and heirs, the ownership of West Ham United, he's probably not going anywhere anytime soon, is he? This is quite a dangerous turn. This is quite a awkward set of events, because I suspect that David Sullivan is going nowhere, and the protests are going to gather momentum, and the club is in a relegation battle. All these things are creating something of a perfect storm. And I have to say that with this upcoming game against Brentford, which is the first home game of Nuno, Espírito, Santo, one of the things that a lot of the comments that I've been seeing on the channel regarding the protest movement, and there was a video that I did about it, and please feel free to go back and have a look at it, is the fact that a lot of people are quite conflicted about, they want to support the protest, but they also want to support the team in a critical game of Nuno's era, his first home game, and also given the backdrop of our fight against relegation. It's a lot of people are quite sort of torn between, should I support the protest and should I support the team? And look, everybody's got to wrestle with that conundrum and make their own decision. I've made my decision, and my decision is, and it is a tough one, that I will be staying away. I will hold firm on my commitment to the protest, but I can understand that there may be people that are wavering and even at this moment in time have not firmly made up their mind as to what they're going to do. I understand it's a difficult decision, and I'm not going to sit here and tell people what they should and shouldn't do. It's a free country and you will do what you see fit. But I do think that this has made the task of removing David Sullivan from post much, much more tricky. I think it already was tricky, in truth. I think that it was already going to be a really long, hard and drawn out battle, because, as I say, David Sullivan, from the reports of Sean Whetstone on More Than Just a Podcast the other week, seems to suggest that he doesn't believe he's going anywhere anytime soon. And when he does go, he's only going to pass it on to his sons, which is probably something we already knew, but it's now been confirmed. And as I say, he's now, in the time at the club that he's got left, however long and short that might be, David Sullivan, I believe, has grown in his influence and his power. As I say, majority shareholder, chairman, de facto director of football, and I believe he is now effectively the head of recruitment. One of the other things, of course, is that I suspect that the influence of Jorge Mendes will probably be quite significant. But it'll be quite interesting to see how he marries up with David Sullivan. That could be quite an interesting relationship to see how it unfolds during the course of the January transfer window. And make no mistake, the January transfer window will be absolutely critical for the future of West Ham United because we need to get it right. What do you think? So Kyle Macaulay's removal as head of recruitment at West Ham United, has that made David Sullivan's influence within the club just that little bit stronger? And has it made the task of removing him, as Hammers United want to, from his positions of influence at the club, has that just made the task even more tricky? And what do you think about the comments on More Than Just a Podcast from Sean Whetstone that allude to the narrative that David Sullivan's time at the club will end with his death, and it will only simply pass into the hands of his sons? How does that make you feel? What are your thoughts on that? Get all the comments in the section below of what we've discussed here and plenty more besides. Get it stuck in. Please don't forget to drop a like on the stream. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. And as I say, have a little look at the Brentford boycott video that you can see up on the screen now. And I'll see you soon. Take care. Come on, you Irons.